instrumental in helping me to get through the deaths in my illnesses that I have experienced over the past number of years. In 2014, my mother passed away at age 95. In 2015, my youngest sister, Kathy, passed away at age 71. She was the primary caregiver for my mother, and I was my sister's backup. In 2016, my wife Karen died at age 69. She had Alzheimer's, and I was her primary caregiver for 2 years. In the year 2018, I had a quadruple bypass, which did not go well. I ended up in a medically induced coma for 4 weeks. Eventually, I was transferred to Spalding Rehab Hospital and had the Whipple operation to remove a cyst on my pancreas, which turned out to be pancreatic cancer stage 1. Between 2019 and early 2020, I ended back up in the hospital 7 times for septic infections. In 2022, I was told that my cancer was back and I had 6 months to a year to live. In 2023, I was told that my tumor factor was down and my cancer had become inactive. My spiritual well-being is very important to me, so I've decided to do 3 YouTube videos on steps 2, 3, and 11. I will take quotes from the Big Book and the 12 and 12. There are questions we discussed in AWOLs that I attended over the last couple of years. I also have some questions that I found on the internet for each step. For these questions, I will provide my answers from my own experience, as well as provide applicable quotes from the Big Book and the 12 and 12. I also provide quotes from a book by Richard Moore known as Breathing Underwater. Father Rohr provides a comparison between the 12 and 12 and the Bible, spirituality in the 12 steps. At the back of the book, he has a section known as a study guide, where he provides questions to review his writings on each step. I will answer these questions from my own experience and provide applicable quotes from Breathing Underwater. My spiritual practice has evolved as follows. Prior to my going into the hospital in 2018, I would read daily reflections from about 6 books. My present practice consists of journaling 3 pages of my stream of consciousness as soon as I have made my coffee and prepared my breakfast. This practice is known as morning pages. And I do this first thing in the morning. I've been doing this daily since September 2022. I have 15 short prayers I say on a daily basis. At 8 a.m., I join a rosary group on Zoom, which I have been attending daily since February 2021. I try to practice meditation as often as possible, and I belong to a meditation group which meets on Tuesday and Thursday. I've been a member of that group since 2017. I now am the chairperson of this group and have been for the last 2 years after the previous chairperson passed away. Alcoholics Anonymous Step 2 states, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. What can we believe in? AA does not demand belief. 12 steps are only suggestions. There are a variety of ways to faith. You can substitute AA as your higher power. Many alcoholics substitute negative for positive thinking. Self-righteousness and defiance are outstanding characteristics of alcoholics. Step 2 is a rallying point to sanity and developing a right relation with God. 12 and 12, page 6, paraphrase. Quotes from the big book in the 12 and 12 on step 2. In order to not discourage people that have problems with God, AA refers to a power greater than ourselves, which is referred to later as a higher power. This is the God of our understanding, which is referenced to in step 3. In the big book, there are 19 references to higher power and 22 references to 12 and 12. Step 2, Playing God, big book, page 62. This is how and the why of it. First of all, we had to quit playing God. It didn't work. Next, we decided in this drama of life, God was going to be our director. He is the principal, we are the agent. He is the Father, we are His children. Most good ideas are simple, and this concept was the keystone of a new and triumphant arch through which we pass to freedom. Step 2, substituting AA as a higher power, 12 and 12, forward, pages 27 to 28. Many a man like you has begun to solve the problem by the method of substitution. You can, if you wish, make AA itself your higher power. You will find many members who have crossed the threshold just this way. Step 2, disgusted with religion, 12 and 12, page 30. Another crowd of AA says, we're plumb disgusted with religion and all its works. The Bible, we said, was full of nonsense. We could cite a chapter and verse, and we couldn't see the Beatitudes for the begots. In spots, its morality was impossibly good. In others, it seemed impossibly bad. But it was the morality of the religiousists themselves that really got us down. Step 2, killing in the name of God, 12 and 12, page 30. How we love to shout the damaging fact that millions of the good men of religion were still killing one another off in the name of God. This all meant, of course, that we had substituted negative for positive thinking. Step 2, God has not delivered, 12 and 12, page 30. So it's not strange that a lot of us have had our day at defying God Himself. Sometimes it's because God has not delivered us the good things of life, which we specified as greedy children makes an impossible list for Santa Claus. Step 2, asking God's will for us, 12 and 12, page 32. When we encounter AA, the fallacy of our defiance was revealed. At no time had we asked what God's will was for us. Instead, we've been telling Him what it ought to be. No man we saw can believe in God and defy Him too. Belief meant reliance, not defiance. In AA, we saw the fruits of this belief. Men and women spared from alcohol. It's final catastrophe. Step 2, not praying rightly. 12 and 12, page 33. We had always said, grant me my wish instead of thy will be done. The love of God and man we understood not at all. Therefore, we remained self-deceived and so incapable of receiving enough grace to restore us to sanity. Problem drinkers are not mentally ill. 12 and 12, page 33. Some will be willing to term themselves problem drinkers, but cannot endure the suggestion that they're in fact mentally ill. Some internet questions on step 2. What is my concept of a higher power currently? My answer to question: a loving and forgiving Almighty God that I can ask for forgiveness from if I make a mistake through using step 7. Big book, Working with Others, page 100. I will be done. We are then in much danger of excitement, fear, anger, worry, self-pity, or foolish decisions. We can become much more efficient. We alcoholics are undisciplined, so we let God discipline us in a simple way we have just outlined. Have past experience affected my concept of a higher power? If so, how? My answer to the question: I believed in a vengeful God. I was unable to feel that I could live up to the expectation of this God, and I lost confidence in the church of my youth, the Catholic Church, because of the actions of the clergy. There was a major problem with getting my son buried in the church that we attended, and later the scandal of sexual abuse by priests on young parishioners. Big book, Jim Story, page 238. The thought came to me that if God, as my mother said, was a vengeful God, he couldn't be a loving God. I wasn't able to comprehend it. I rebelled, and from that time on, I don't think I attended church more than a dozen times. What do I hope to gain from accepting the concept of a power greater than myself? My answer: I would get God's help if I asked for it, and I would try to accept His will for me. Sometimes His will was not what I was expecting. Sometimes His answer is no. Big book, Working with Others, page 100. We do not tire so easily, for we are not burning up energy foolishly as we did when we were trying to arrange life to suit ourselves. It works, it really does. Big book, Working with Others, page 100. Follow the dictates of a higher power, and you will presently live in a new and wonderful world, no matter what your present circumstance. How do I describe a higher power I found in Alcoholics Anonymous? My answer: a loving and forgiving God who forgives us if we admit we are wrong. I also have the 10-step, which says, continue to take personal inventory, and when we are wrong, promptly admit it. The purpose of AA's 10th step is to demonstrate to ourselves that we have the ability to control our actions. We are no longer functioning like a robot under the weight of old habits, or while not thinking about what we're doing. Big book, Bill's Story, page 33. Bill Wilson said, my friend suggested then seemed a novel idea. He said, why don't you choose your own concept of God? That statement hit me hard. It melted the icy intellectual mountain whose shadow I'd lived and shivered many years. I stood in the sunlight at last. It was only a matter of being willing to believe in a power greater than myself. Nothing more was required of me to make my beginning. I saw the growth and start from that point. Upon a foundation of complete willingness, I might build what I saw in my friend. Would I have it? Of course I would. Thus, I was convinced that God is concerned with us, humans, when we want Him enough. Big book, How It Works, page 68. Just to the extent that we do as we think He would have us do, and humbly rely on Him, does He enable us to match calamity with serenity. What does let God mean to me? My answer: I need to abdicate my self-will and ask God to help me with my present situation or problem. Big book, Into Action, page 85. What we really have is a daily reprieve contingent upon the maintenance of our spiritual condition. Every day is a day when we must carry the vision of God's will into our activities. How can I best serve Thy? Thy will, not mine, be done. These are thoughts which must go with us constantly. We can exercise our willpower along this line all we wish. It is a proper use of the will. Big Book into Action, page 87. We constantly remind ourselves we are no longer running the show, humbly saying to ourselves many times each day, Thy will be done. What might I gain from believing I could be supported and loved by a power greater than myself? My answer to the question: it makes my life much easier. I'm not as frustrated. Dependence on God is independence. It cuts down my thinking around in circles. It also reduces my anxiety and frustration that comes with trying to solve the problem with self-will. I have to let my conscience be my guide in figuring out what God's will is for me once I've asked for God's help. A relative quote from a prayer by Thomas Merton. The fact that I think I'm following your will does not mean that I'm actually doing so, but I believe that the desire to please you does, in fact, please you, and I hope that I have the desire in all I'm doing. I hope that I will never do anything apart from that desire. Big Book, How It Works, page 68. But we are now on a different basis, the basis of trusting and relying on God. We trust infinite God rather than our finite self. We are in the world to play the role. We are in the world to play the role He assigns. Just to the extent that we do as we think He would have us, and humbly rely on Him, does He enable us to match calamity with serenity. What does came to believe mean to me? My answer to the question: I believe a power greater than myself has helped me to stop drinking, has restored me to sanity. He helps me when I ask for help and never gives me more than I can handle. Big Book, Working with Others, page 100. When we look back, we realize that things which came to us when we put ourselves in God's hand are better than anything we could have planned. What does the word sanity mean to me? My answer to the question: dictionary definition, reasonable and sensible behavior or thinking. Doing the right thing that God wants me to do, basically following my conscience. Big Book into Action, page 84 to 85. And we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. For by this time we have returned. By this time sanity will have returned. We will seldom be interested in liquor. If tempted, we recoil from it, as from a hot flame. We react sanely and normally, and we will find that this has happened automatically. We will see that our attitude towards liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. How has alcohol affected my sanity in my life? My answer to the question: I would do things contrary to my conscience. I would lie, cheat, and steal. I would belittle people to make me look good. Big Book, More About Alcoholism. The idea is somehow and someday will control and enjoy his drink is the greatest obsession of every abnormal drinker. The persistence of this illusion is agonizing. Many pursue it into the gates of insanity or death. The persistence of this illusion is astonishing. Many pursue it into the gates of insanity or death. When I have done the same thing over and over, yet expect different results. When have I done the same thing over and over again, expecting different results? My answer: while I was drinking and sometimes today. I'm trying to solve my problems through self-will, not relying on God after a particularly bad hangover. I would swear off drinking, but that would not last long, and I would say to myself, this time it's going to be different, but it was not. Big Book, page 30, more about alcoholism. The idea that somehow, someday we'll control and enjoy his drink is a great obsession of every abnormal drinker. The persistence of this illusion is astounding. From the book Breathing Underwater, Chapter 2, Desperate Desiring, Step 2. Some quotes from Breathing Underwater. Quote from the book Breathing Underwater, page 7. Yes, we are carrying our own death warrants with us, but it is teaching us not to rely on ourselves, but on a God whose task is to raise the dead to life. 2 Corinthians chapter 1. Quote from Breathing Underwater book, page 9. Religion is lived by people who are afraid of hell. Spirituality is lived by people who have been through hell. Quote from Breathing Underwater book, page 14 to 15. Reconnecting head, heart, and body. If we are come to believe that a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity, then we will come to that belief by developing the capacity for simple, clear, and uncluttered presence. Those who can be present with head, heart, and body at the same time will always encounter the presence, whether they call it God or not. For the most part, these skills are learned by letting life come at us on its own terms and not resisting the wonderful underlying mystery that is everywhere all the time and offered to us too. God comes to us disguised as our life. As a spiritual writer and retreat leader, Paula Darcy so beautifully put it in her talks and retreats. Come to believe, which is a slow and gradual healing and reconnecting of head, heart, and body so we can operate as one. Both movements are critical. The healing of ourselves, the healing of our always limited or even toxic image of God. This of itself will often reconnect all three parts of our humanity into a marvelous receiving station. A true God experience really does save us because it's always better than we thought we could expect to earn. Let's end with the blessing from St. Paul, who recognized these three parts of the human person in his very first letter. May the peace of God make you whole and holy. May you be kept safe in body, heart, and mind, and thus ready for the presence of God as call you and will not fail you. Theologians. 1. Study Guide, Breathing Underwater, page 135. In what areas of your life do you most strongly resist opening up to new ways of being? My answer to the question. My mind bombards me with negative thoughts, particularly when I first wake up. I thank God for letting me wake up and ask Him for an attitude of gratitude if it's His will. I then do a 3-page journaling practice called Morning Pages when I have my morning coffee and I start eating my breakfast. Quote from the Breathing Underwater book. Honestly, it takes major surgery, much as one's life, to get head, heart, and body to put their defenses, their false programs for happiness, and their many forms of resistance to what is right in front of them. This is the meat and the muscle of the whole conversion process. Page 9. Second question. How can we begin to be still and just be in the presence of the higher power? My answer to this question. I try to get myself to use mindfulness meditation practice getting myself into the present moment. Quote from the book: to keep the mind space open, we need some form of contemplative or meditation practice. This has been the most neglected in recent centuries, substituting the mere reciting and saying of prayers, which is not the same as contemplative mind, and often merely conforms us in our superior or fear-based system. Step 11 was wise enough to name prayer and meditation as necessary to the process. I personally describe contemplation as non-dual consciousness, and find that it is necessary to overcome the stinking thinking of most addicts, which tends to be all or nothing thinking. One could say that the authentic spirituality is invariably a matter of emptying the mind and filling the heart at the same time. Share a time when your heart was broken. How has this led you to more compassion? My answer to the question: my wife dying and later finding out that I had cancer. My way of dealing with both situations was to become more active in AA and do more service work. I also started writing script about my life in my AA life for YouTube videos. I do morning pages, journaling first thing in the morning. Quote from the book Breathing Underwater: and to be fully honest, I think our hearts needs to be broken open at least once to have a heart at all, or to have a heart up for others. As Simeon told Mary, a sword will pierce your heart, so the secret thoughts of many will be laid bare. Luke 2:35, and that's from page 12 in Breathing Underwater. Question 4. When was the last time you touched someone or someone touched you? What stopped you from doing this? I get a few hugs each weekend from my AA women friends. Quote from the book: it was always deeply disappointed me that Christian religion was the only one that believed God became a human body, and we have such deficient and frankly negative attitudes towards embodiment. The physical world, sexuality, emotional, animals, healthy physical practices like yoga, and nature itself. It often seems to me that Western Christianity has been much more formed by Plato, body and soul are at war, than by Jesus, body and soul are already one. For many of us, the body is more repressed and denied than even the mind or the heart.